Okay, well, Field, over the last week or so, I had one of my few brainwaves. Well, I think I actually get a lot of brainwaves, but some of them go nowhere. But I decided that maybe one way of getting through to the public consciousness is to stage plays in injured communities where the injured community produces the play, and we, that is you and I and the Able Danger team, do the treatments. Now, I'm not too familiar with the terminology of the acting professional, although I was, as you know, a comic actor of great repute up here in White Rock. Actually, a woman bought me a rose at the end of the act, so that I thought was very nice, but to digress. Anyway, a treatment apparently is where the people in the know with the understanding of where they want this play to go, they prepare a cast of characters and they describe the characters and the main theme of the story, and then they tout that around the production industry, I suppose, Hollywood and film producers and that sort of thing, and see if there's any interest. And I was thinking, what an amazing cast of characters you and I have identified, and to a certain extent tracked, since we started working together back in December of 2006. So I thought, well, if the treatments require a cast of characters, why don't we pick a major mass casualty crime scene and do the treatment for the principals of that crime scene, the perpetrators and perhaps the victims, and then dangle that in front of what I describe as an injured community. And I'm getting some resonance in Queens, which I think is that a borough of New York City? Is that the proper name of it?
Yeah, just give me a split second to cage my brain. I've been to the Mormon, somebody's going to have to tell me where I've been. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir. If somebody in the chat room who's not tired, I've slept for most of 3 days, I think. I can ask Denise. But I was plumb on empty when I got here. I've never slept in the car with her before, and that is confusing some of you people, but what I mean is she drives and I take a nap. It's never happened until this, and I slept all the way home from the airport. Then I stayed in bed for 2 naps on Tuesday. Wednesday, I think I had 2 naps. I'm not sure what today is. It must be Thursday. Let me ask, did I have a nap today? I think I did. Yeah, I did. I'm just completely fatigued with what I've been trying to do for people from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday to a lesser degree, and then I haven't done anything till right now. So what was your question? Oh yeah, Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Queens is not a very upscale. In fact, it's the exact opposite. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure where Clinton had his, I mean the male pervert Clinton, not the female pervert Clinton, but he might have had his office one step down from Queens. But I've been to Queens, and I'll tell you what, if anybody ever got me to go to Queens again, I would ditch the party I was with, and I'd go to the Mormon Tabernacle, whatever church that is. It's the most powerful church I've ever been in. But that wasn't your question. Your question was about Queens. Yeah, I know where Queens is. I've been there. Go ahead.
Okay, well, apparently Queens, of all the boroughs, if that's the right term, around New York City, was the one most injured by 911 in terms of the fatalities of the Fire Department of New York members, of which 343 died, but at least 50 came from Queens. So Queens was devastated, you know, family connections, multiplier effects and so on. So thousands of people were traumatized by the 911 attack. And of course, what happens with an event, even on that scale, is eventually through inertia and propaganda and misdirection, the public is led to believe one thing, and you and I know, I think you and I know probably better than any couple in the world what really happened.
Point of order, we're not a couple.
No.
I'm spoken for.
Yes, and I wish I was, but you know, there's a number of women in the wings waiting. But anyway, I digress. Now you've thrown me off my pitch.
That's okay.
Okay, so all right, we're not a couple. However, we have tracked two of the key characters that were principal players in the events of 9/11. So I put a list of characters together, a cast in order of appearance, where the actors will play based on information and belief what we believe the real individuals were doing on 9/11. And so, in particular, the theatre club would be called the Twin Towers Theatre Club for obvious reasons, because that has an immediate resonance. Everyone would know what we're talking about. Of course, they wouldn't know what the treatment or the storyline was. So what I'm proposing is that we tell them through Abel Danger and on our website. I presented, I think it was Kelly 301, I think now it was 302 perhaps, and right now we're looking at 304, but 302 described the Twin Towers Theatre Club cast in order of appearance, and you'll be pleased to know that you and I play major roles. In particular, in terms of the people that we're tracking. So, going back to the role of your sister, I believe when she stole money, and I'm alleging that she stole it, from the Department of Justice Asset Forfeiture Fund in 1985, and bought the Marshals a Boeing 727 for the United States Marshals Prisoner Transportation Service, she became the Queen of Con Air. That is to say, she had the capacity to fly some of the most dangerous people in the United States to a crime scene before the crime occurs, and immediately after the crime scene has occurred, exfiltrate them. I did teach you exfiltrate, didn't I, Phil?
Yes, you taught me explaculate very well, and I think I'm the second most knowledgeable person in the world on the word explaculation.
Yes, and then you moved on to exfiltrate, and I think we discussed that at a later date. But apparently, when you put a SWAT team into a crime scene, you have to infiltrate them so that not too many people realize that they've come in, and then exfiltrate them so that not too many people realize they've actually gone. In the particular case of the Twin Towers, it appears, Phil, there were 80 elevator mechanics with Ace Elevators of Palisades, New Jersey, in their uniforms, and the term is they scattered like roaches. Now, Ace Elevators got the contract to upgrade the elevators in the Twin Towers, high-speed elevators from the ground right to the top, and had ample opportunity to clad the inside elevator shafts with Smaxonic that would act like a rocket fuel, solid propellant rocket fuel, if it was ignited. Now, these characters scattered like roaches as the buildings were blown up. And do you know where they went back to, according to the people who was tracking them?
Yes, I know everything, David, as you have sometimes forgotten. They went to England.
Right. So I think those guys were a Con Air SWAT team, or maybe members of 22 SAS, the Special Air Services. That is a very capable group, probably very much like the SEALs and the Marines. But would be very well qualified if they were set the task of demolishing those Twin Towers. And as you know, Ramzi Youssef attempted to demolish the Twin Towers in 1993 by blowing one up with the interior columns and trying to get it to fall into the other. Now, if two towers collapse sideways, if you will, in Lower Manhattan, I would guess it would shut Lower Manhattan down for 6 months or a year, and maybe it wasn't even worth starting, so it could be totally devastating. But what's interesting to me is where Ramzi Youssef ended up. Well, he ended up in the clutches of your bitch sister.
That's not fair to bitches. Come up with something more
true.
accurate.
All right, well, she puts this guy, Ramzi Youssef, in ADX Florence, side by side in a cell with Timothy McVeigh and Ted Kaczynski, and creates a little university of the bombing community with the ability, without telling anyone else, but really a covert group, to actually fly these guys on parole from one place to another, set up some very sophisticated bombing operations. For example, the Murrah Building bomb. So to cut a long story short, you and I and the Able Danger team and whether we're blessed by serendipity or whatever, we have the ability to write a treatment for one of these major mass casualty crime scenes that is extraordinary, because every character in that has a pivotal role to play during the play, and we understand the internal psychology of those characters probably better than anyone else alive. And I'm thinking, so your role, and I hope you'll accept it, but anyway, if you didn't accept it, we could have an actor that play you. I think it might be a little difficult to cover all of your bodily functions, but I think we could get an actor to put a pretty convincing display together of Field McConnell in action. Do you think that's plausible?
Well, I think I'm going to be busy with the ranch, but first I'll answer your question about who should play my character, because I have a perfect idea. But you missed, as you often do, you see but you don't observe. You just told me that you think the SAS might have been the cockroaches.
No, I think the SAS might have been dressed in Ace Elevator uniforms, and they wouldn't be working with the SAS at that moment. They would have left the SAS having been fully trained.
Okay, you didn't hear my question. Who scattered like cockroaches?
Ace Elevator mechanics.
And who were they?
Well, we don't know.
So you're telling me they were not SAS people posing as Ace Elevator mechanics?
They weren't legitimate Ace Elevator mechanics. They were someone or some organization dressed in Ace Elevator uniforms who had a profound knowledge of the internals of the Twin Towers and the capacity of blowing them up.
Okay, but how was the SAS involved again?
Because the insurance pool that doubled the insurance on the Twin Towers is an organization called Pool Re, and the risk specialist for Pool Re, who would have met on the 47th floor, is a man called Ed Butler.
Yeah, David, you're giving me way too much information. What was the SAS involved in the attack in New York? Yes or no?
Yes.
Then you're missing the point. That's an act of war.
No, I'm not missing the point. We haven't discussed the act of war. We're discussing a crime.
I don't care about crimes. Crimes
And
can
it
be
has to
handled
be
by
proven.
law enforcement. An act of war needs to be handled tit for tat by the military.
Right.
The fact that foreign military is creating an attack on American soil makes anything done by a bunch of pissants insignificant. If the SAS was on American soil and attacked us, that is the equivalent of the UK attacking the United States of America. And the reason I'm bringing this up is just today it dawned on me, if the visa is not produced, in fact, I've already requested that Denise and I come back on Air Force One when Trump is over here kicking the shit out of Theresa May. I don't know what he's going to say to Theresa May, but there's no rationale for kind words, especially after you tell me that SAS was in New York on 9/11. All the rest of this crap doesn't matter.
Okay, well, I don't want to terminate the conversation until I've explored this concept more profoundly. What I'm trying to do is based on information and belief. So I can tell you I believe that the SAS was involved in the demolition of the Twin Towers, but it has yet to be proven. So you don't go to war with another country until that's been proven. I want the plays that I'm talking about to communicate to the public. The compelling question is, who were these guys dressed in Ace Elevator uniforms? Why did they scatter like cockroaches, and why did they go back to England? So the purpose of the play is to get those questions asked by the public that has been injured in that community, including the people in Queens who lost 50 members of the Fire Department of New York. So you don't need to have one country go to an act of war based on supposition and belief, but I think we owe it to the people who like to listen to us that we are doing diligent research, and I would say, as far as I'm concerned, based on information I believe ex-SAS were involved in the demolition of the Twin Towers.
Okay, and I want you to list 5 wars that have been entered into since 1950 that were based on facts.
Based on facts?
Yes. In other words, has there been one war in the world that involves either the UK or the US since 1950 that was based on a factual aggression?
That I don't know. That's too vague a question for me.
Well, I think it's significant if you're telling me that the United States shouldn't come over and clean out the UK if the UK attacked America on 9/11, which they did, and they used Canada as a proxy. They used Lord Timothy Garden, they used Prince Philip, they used Serco, and on and on and on. So I don't think we can educate the masses if we can't intimidate the perpetrators. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, that's your opinion.
It certainly is. And that's why I won't be involved in the project.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute. I've got the perfect guy to play my part. An African-American gay, because that would look like a pretty good disguise.
Are you trivializing this?
No, I'm not. I'm telling you, it would be the perfect disguise. And you just said everybody's
All right.
public parts have to be played. I would, if I can't, or if you can't find an African-American gay to pretend like he's me undercover, then I think you're going to get a less confusing actor. But go ahead.
Well, you're confusing me.
Well, that's okay. Go on as if I hadn't said a word.
Okay, so, all right, whether we play, and it doesn't matter, I think you're right. The spirit of Field McConnell could be played by any actor, black, gay, female, or otherwise. However, the tracking of your sister requires that role to be played.
Yes, I understand that.
And it wouldn't convince the audience very much if your sister in the play was tracked by a brother who is a black, gay African.
Okay.
I think it's unrealistic.
You think what's unrealistic?
It's unrealistic if we put up an actor in a play that is black and gay, and he's supposed to be playing the role of the brother of Christine Marcy, who's a real personality who had a fundamental role in the attack at 9/11. I think the audience would be confused and it would be irrelevant.
Okay, keep going.
All right. So, who is the principal in the attack on the Twin Towers? Well, it's very convenient from the point of view of the play because the opening scene, I believe, would be Christopher Hyman at a breakfast meeting in the Windows in the World restaurant at the top of the North Tower. And he's at a meeting with the Risk Waters group, and at around 8:30 on the morning of 9/11, he gets up and goes down the elevator to the 47th floor to meet with the shareholders of Serco, which includes major American banks such as BNY Mellon representatives, includes a number of insurance companies that would commit a fraud with the double occurrence demolition of the Twin Towers, three governments, which would be the British government, the Singaporean government, and the Saudi Arabian government. And he goes down, and everyone he leaves behind dies. And so the question to be asked, and it hasn't yet been asked of Christopher Hyman, who remember is was the chief executive officer of the world's largest air traffic controller, which is Serco, is why did you get up and leave that breakfast meeting? So I visualize the play. There'll be an audience. At the end of the Act 1, they'll go out into the lobby. The interior, or the stage, will be set up to look like the Windows in the World restaurant. And the question they would ask is, why did he get up? Where did he go? Everyone will know that the people he left behind are doomed to die. I think that is a very interesting cliffhanger, if you will. When he gets to the 47th floor, he goes to this meeting of Serco shareholders, and I believe, and this would be in the play, that meeting is hosted by the investment banker for Serco, which happens to be the investment banker for your President Donald Trump and Queen Elizabeth II. And I think the individual that we would put on the stage playing the part of the NM Rothschild representative would play the part of Wilbur Ross. And Wilbur Ross, as you know, is Secretary of Commerce under the Trump administration and is responsible for the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And the United States Patent and Trademark Office is currently operated by Serco. So what Christopher Hyman had access to on the morning of 9/11 is the world's largest air traffic control network, which runs towers, I believe, in Dubai and Baghdad. The operation of the United States National Visa Center, which would have been set up by your sister to bring in, this would be an allegation in the play, the Al-Qaeda sleeper cells. And that was set up in 1994 under the administration of Bill Clinton. What Serco also has is control of the United States Defense Ammunition Center. So effectively and strategically, this British company Serco, with its shareholders, including the government of Saudi Arabia and the government of the United Kingdom and the government of Singapore, had access to all of the key networks needed to execute the attack on the Twin Towers and demolish the Twin Towers and basically kill 343 members of the Fire Department of New York, which was mass murder on a scale that's hard to contemplate. Now, with your sister's ability to deploy SWAT teams, the allegation in the play would be that she had stationed around the Twin Towers various groups of specialists who could commit the different kinds of crimes needed to pull this off and escape justice. One group is obviously the script writers, script, spot, shoot, snuff, spin, spoil. And getting to the end of the day, there was a whole group of people both in Washington and New York that were in a position to take away the evidence of who committed that crime. And it wasn't the government of the United Kingdom. Within the government of the United Kingdom, just like within the government of the United States, you have networks of traitors and patriots. And unfortunately for the United States and the United Kingdom, the people who put those networks together still operate them today. And the claim that this was an attack by Al-Qaeda out of a cave in Afghanistan is bullshit. So what are some of the other characters in these plays, in this proposed play? So you've said, Phil, that you don't want to be part of it.
I don't have time, David. If the ranch happens, which I think it's gonna, I'm gonna be the day-to-day guy at the ranch, and I'm gonna have Pastor Braveheart has already said that when I'm not at the ranch, he can run it, and I can fly an airplane for the entity that is buying the ranch, and we would be going over to England and Russia to pick up veterans and bring them back. That's what my future is pinned to. Now, will it happen? I don't know, but do you have any idea where I was Monday?
Boston, no?
Well, close. I mean, yes, effectively that's yes. It was actually on Cape Cod, but that's effectively Boston, and I was there at a golf tournament, and in fact, I'm going to ask somebody in the chat room that can put up the picture that was on the golf cart, because there were probably 60 to 80 golf carts, 2 persons each cart. The first golf cart was driven by a Marine Corps 3-star general, and the second golf cart was driven by me. And what I'm demonstrating there is not my love of golf or driving electric vehicles, but I had the ear of somebody that's a 3-star general, and I had his ear for 2.5 hours straight, and we got along very well. And his wife is a Naval Academy graduate who is even lower in class standing than me, but she's quite bright and she's got a great sense of humor. and I said something disparaging about Naval Academy graduates, and then I looked at this general and I said, I sure hope you didn't go to Annapolis. Not that I really gave a rat's ass, because everyone knows me, and he did too before he met me. He said, no, I didn't, but my wife did. And she picked right up. She said, yes, I was in the top 95% of the class. Now, what does that mean to you, David?
The top 95%, she's pretty smart.
No, she's in the bottom 5%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I expressed to that person that my wife would have loved to have been here, but she's being corruptly kept out of the United States by customs. And I didn't give him any more details. I don't like to waste anybody's time. And at the end of our 2.5-hour meeting, when I had to take Mad Dog back to his house so I could try to get over here to England, which obviously I did, he gave me such a strong compliment, and he was sincere. I was looking right in his eyes, and I'm not going to repeat that. It's been repeated to my wife, and Mad Dog witnessed it. But I obviously have the ear of someone that can help, and I've asked Telford Russian in the chat room to come up and help me think of a tweet that we can send to the POTUS, because Trump's coming over here to explain the new paradigm to England on the Friday the 13th. Now, how's that for a date? Friday the 13th. And if I'm still here on Friday the 13th, I'm going to officially ask them to give Denise and I a ride home in Air Force One. Now, that, in my mind, is how you get attention. But anyway, over to you.
All right, so I think I understand and respect that you don't want to play a role in that as yourself, but I certainly think we can get an actor to fulfill fairly honorably and accurately what's transpired since your sister bought that United States Marshall Prisoner Transportation System, the Boeing 727, on the 20th of August 1985, and called you in December of 1988 and asked you how she should handle the mutiny, and you told her about droning the aircraft. And what I'm saying is that she went away with that suggestion. She stole money from the Department of Justice Asset Forfeiture Fund. She corrupted the United States Patent and Trademark Office, or was told to corrupt the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and procured a series of patented devices that are really extraordinarily interesting in terms of the play and how to describe the events of these crime scenes. And I'm thinking of 3 patented devices. One is the patent for a training system for AWACS weapons directors, which would allow the operator of that training system to switch from courseware, which is like training an individual air traffic controller, through to simulation, such as the simulated war game exercises on 911, and then, and I think this is going to be very dramatic, switch to a live fire event. That is to say, I believe about 70 AWACS aircraft were made by Boeing. I think the majority were made up in Washington State. And unfortunately for the United States, the preferred supplier of command and control equipment for those Boeing aircraft, including the AWACS, is the British company Serco. So that patent that would allow you to switch from courseware to simulation to live fire training would have been under the control of Serco's associates with Christopher Hyman on the morning of 911. Then there's 2 other patents that are germane, I think, to the attack of 911 and the demolition of the Twin Towers. And they've both been taken out by a man called Jerome H. Lemelson, who's now dead. He died in 1997. And the first patent, maybe the most important, is the patent for prisoner tracking. And Lemelson's idea, apparently, what was put into his little head was you could have a prisoner tracking system that would upgrade the privileges of the prisoner depending on their behavior. Now, this would be of great interest to your sister because presumably she could upgrade some prisoners so they could get regular paroles or ad hoc paroles, and other prisoners who she disapproved of could be downgraded into solitary confinement and administered the kind of drugs, because you told me that she was a failed, wanted to study medicine, but she flunked out of it. But she is acknowledged as the sponsor of a prisoner medical services program. So this bitch, I have to use that word again.
Yeah, but you're being unkind to bitches. She's far worse than that. She is the second most evil person in America, unless G.H.W. Bush has died, in which case she's the title holder.
Right. So a wonderful character for these plays. So she would have been in a position to administer psychotropic drugs to these prisoners to make them hallucinate, make them angry, put them into a coma. And I would guess if I was a prisoner in your prison system, part of which has been privatized, I would be terrified of this woman, because her reputation would have been spread around pretty quickly. One of the things she seems to have specialized in is crisscrossing the country, looking for beds for her prisoners. And we talk about the families in Mexico getting separated, the children getting separated from their parents. Your sister pioneered that, because she was separating children and parents and mingling the children and the parents with hardened felons and criminals, where they were subject to abuse. And she knew exactly what she was doing, because essentially, I would argue, Field, that she was creating a pedophile entrapment and blackmail network that at any future date could be used to keep otherwise honorable people silent about the real events of 9/11. Anyway, those two periods, one in 1985, she buys a Boeing 727 for the U.S. Marshals Transportation System. December 1988, she asks you how to handle a mutiny, and you tell her about droning, and she has the money and the resources to start modifying the Boeings inside the Conair fleet, and subsequently, I believe, for 911, so they can fly as drones, which they did on 911. So coming back to Mr. Lemelson, who's now dead, who had 605 patents to his credit. Well, I have 2, fractal paintbrush and the deductive computing machine, and I know what hard work is required to get to the point where you can actually write up a patent and apply for it realistically. This guy was a scam artist, but I'm sure he was paid by people who decided that one way of controlling the sovereign state, like the United States, is to capture its patent office, which has duly been done. The United States now does not have American nationals controlling the patent office, the Defense Ammunition Center, the National Visa Center, or something like 62 contract towers in Europe, in the United States. That's been outsourced primarily through the Clinton administration to a criminal organization, which I think is nicely summarized as Conair. After all, she's probably flown your sister upwards of 1 million prisoners over the period she had those key roles where she was senior counsel for the United States Marshal Service. Those prisoners are put through a medical procedures that can pacify them or make them extremely aggressive. They ultimately float back into the free world as parolees. They're the perfect recruiting pool for a Conair SWAT team. So, Mr. Lemelson, what was the other patent that he invented, or it was assigned to him? I think it was very interesting. It's friend or foe identification. Now, in 911, I think you've told me, Field, or I've learned it from somewhere else, that when Captain Gerald Conto realized that the weapons platform heading his way was sending out friend signals, he called the Secretary of the Navy, Gordon England, asking for permission to launch the missiles on the roof of the Pentagon. And he got stalled by Gordon England, or Gordon England didn't get the message. This would be part, I think, of the play. what was the dialogue that really took place or didn't take place? What was the dialogue that took place or didn't take place between the pilots of the hijacked aircraft, some of whom apparently thought they were played part in a simulated war games, and the air traffic controllers, which I believe were being manipulated by Serco. So the play could do something really interesting, which is illustrate, I think, to the audience, which I hope then would propagate these powerful and compelling questions, how easy it would be if you had access to the National Visa Center and the United States Patent and Trademark Office and the Defense Ammunition Center and the air traffic controllers to stage an attack on the United States on 9/11, kill nearly 3,000 of its citizens, including 343 firefighters and 60 members of the New York Police Department, and attributed it to some clown in a cave in Afghanistan. Well, we know, and you know, and I know, and they know, it didn't happen that way. The problem they face, of course, is there is no one alive, probably other than you and I and our team, to write a treatment of plausible characters who could play their parts in the theater and teach or show or demonstrate to an audience what really happened on 9/11. So that's my objective over the next months, Field. Over to you.
Pardon me?
That's my objective over the next months, is to write the treatments for these plays and see if we can get them launched in various key crime scenes. Right now I'm working on the Kiev crime scene, where a Spanish man called Carlos tweeted that he was inside the air traffic control tower near Kiev, and it had been invaded by armed men during the period when MH17 was knocked off its waypoint to the west of Ukraine, flew over contested territory to a point near Donetsk, where it was allegedly shot out of the sky. And when the rebel commander arrives at the crime scene, he says the bodies are rotten. There are piles of new passports on the ground, and the tapes recording the conversations between the air traffic controllers at the Kiev, it's not the Kiev airport, it's another name that's escaped me at the moment, the conversations between the pilot of MH17 and the guys in Kiev has been confiscated by someone.
Of course, because there was no pilot of MH17, David.
Right. In which case the conversations would have gone nowhere, right?
Okay, you're speaking too fast for someone so tired. In which case what?
The air traffic controllers and that air traffic control, when they were talking to or attempting to talk to the pilot inside the cockpit of MH17, wouldn't have had much of a conversation, but that would be very interesting to look at the tape and see what questions they were asking.
Well,
in which case,
see, this is where maybe a little pilot experience comes in handy. If they wanted to fake a conversation, Singapore 351 was directly overhead and would be on the same frequency as MH17 if MH17 had pilots, which it didn't. And I don't believe it was shot down out of the sky for 1 minute. It might have been shot at, it might have been hit, but pre-placed explosives on that aircraft is what brought it down eventually. They couldn't afford, especially with the disregard that the attacking country was, and I'm saying that the attacking country, in other words, the country controlling MH17 was the United States of America, and the two people that were involved at the top of that project were Obama and Dieter Uchtdorf. And I'll go anywhere in the world. In fact, here's an assignment for you. Start at the bottom of the chat room and go up until you see Hillary's ugly face where it says get Satan on the phone.
Right.
Okay, scroll up until you see a letter. My name's on it. It says Field M, and then there's a letter that I just got 3 minutes ago, or maybe 4. Do you see what the letter says?
Could you come to Islamabad?
Why don't you read the whole thing?
If I need you to. I spoke for 2 hours to an interested man from an agency here today. I told him of your information and how we met. You would need a visa and I could guarantee your physical safety. you could stay at my place or the Marriott or Serena Hotel, let me know, Luke.
Yeah, well, the name's not Luke. It's Dan Hanley, and he's been petitioning me for. Well, let me ask Denise. I'm tired. Denise, how long ago was it that Dan first asked me to come to Pakistan?
Is it Tuesday?
Denise says it's Tuesday, and I believe she's right. I got here Tuesday around 7 in the morning, and Denise was. Yeah, I got around 7, and I got through customs by 8, and I was very surprised to see Denise waiting for me, and she was very surprised too, because she didn't see me come through the tunnel, so to speak. But I strongly resent the treatment that Denise and I have gotten at the hands of the U.S. government, to which I owe no loyalty. I owe a loyalty to the United States constitutional republic. I owe loyalty to Denise, and I owe loyalty to God. And that's the proper order, God, Denise, and the U.S. But I believe the U.S. is going to be restructured. In fact, today is the 28th of June. So I'm going to really go off script, which we've never had. Any idea where I was 51 years ago today, David? And I know you can't guess, so just say no very quickly.
No, very quickly.
Okay, let's try that again. I'm glad to hear you laughing. Yeah, 51 years ago, I was sweating like a, I was sweating like a prostitute in church because it was 28th of June of 67, and I was entering into the jaws of Mother Bancroft, which is the name of the dormitory at the Naval Academy. It was a sweltering day, and I felt totally ill-equipped and inadequate, but I still raised my hand up, and I said, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I've never recanted that. And that was one of my 3 military oaths. There's another oath I took that probably is vastly more important than the sum total of the 3 military. I'm doing this not to bore people, but to demonstrate nobody wants me in court. I took military oaths on the 28th of June of 67, the 5th of July of 71. Which one did I leave out? Yes, okay, the 28th of June of 67, the 9th of June of 71, and the 5th of July of 77. And I've never broken those oaths, and I never will. But in fact, I'm going to reach out to anybody that tweets. I'm going to start a Twitter storm where the people that understand that Denise and I have been abused by the United States government and the corporations, including the IRS, only because they will not produce paperwork for me to show to the embassy that I can provide for her, and Customs and Border Patrol, that group. These are all private corporations posing as government agencies, which they are not. The IRS and the ABA, that's the bums that do anything for dollars in court. Those are both private corporations, but they're under the umbrella corporate ownership of Northern Trust, which is a multinational. And Northern Trust, Serco, and Senior Executive Service are responsible for 9/11, period. Now, if rather than pussyfoot around and take time, there's no time. I mean, the whole world is at risk here, but that sounds negative. I don't want to shower negativity on already very discouraged people around the world. I believe that the entire world has been reset, and we're all going to hear about it. And knowing what a master showman is, in fact, following myself, I think Trump's probably the second most masterful showman in the world today. But I would expect some very big announcement on July 4th, which, as everyone recalls, was our alleged Independence Day, where the United States broke free of the United Kingdom, which it never did. I mean, the United Kingdom today controls our military. The United Kingdom controls prisons. The United Kingdom controls transportation, and they do it through the greasy hands of Serco, which just gave me a good idea. I think Denise and I will go over to Serco, take some pictures, and have lunch at the Crooked Billet. Notice for the record, I didn't say what day, so they pretty much have to be over there every day from now till hell freezes over. But anyway, I'm very intrigued that this guy wants me to come to Islamabad, and I'll just go back to his letter and I'll read it because I want to inject something. Field, could you come to Islamabad, Pakistan if I need you to? I spoke for 2 hours to an interested man from an agency here today. I told him of your information and how we met. You would need a visa and I could guarantee your physical safety. Well, first of all, if he can get me the visa and Denise says it's okay, I'll go. But as far as physical safety, I could care less about that. If God can't protect me, people with guns and badges and funny haircuts and sunglasses aren't going to be able to protect me. So, where God calls me, I'll go. And I want to reach out to Braveheart right now and say, Braveheart, can you come up with a scripture that says if I go somewhere, he goes before me, he holds my hand, and he follows me, or something to that effect. I know it's in the book. You could stay at my place, Ron, or the Marriott or Serena Hotel. Gee, I'd love to stay at the Marriott because I know they've got excellent surveillance inside the rooms. So if somebody that doesn't like me being in Pakistan sent 37 midget prostitutes in there with multicolored hats, it would all be on tape. And then you could say, would you little midgets please get out of here before I get ornery? Better yet, if I took Denise with me, Denise and I could go to Pakistan and have some wonderful Pakistan food, and I think quite a warm welcome, because the two agencies he's talking about, in fact, I'll give you a chance to guess, David. He mentioned there's, let me read it. There was an interested man from an agency here today. Okay, there's actually two agencies involved. Do you have any guess of what two agencies those might be, David?
ISI?
ISI is the equivalent of CIA. Yes, that's one agency.
PIA?
PIA? What is that?
Pakistan Intelligence Agency, isn't it?
No, ISI is. But you know what PIA is?
What?
Pakistan International Airlines. So no, the FBI over there has started a file on him, and they did a background check, and they apparently think that he's got legitimate claims. And keep in mind, in the back end of this operation, the old FBI is out, and the people that want the FBI to be a stable career, they're probably doing the right things now, knowing that they'll be exposed if they continue to do the wrong thing. So let me ask Denise right on this, no pressure, feel free to say no, but two questions. If we were both invited to go to Pakistan, would you go, or would you rather not spend the time in the air?
Well, the embassy has my passport.
Well, they just have to give it up. She said the embassy has her passport. See, that would be good in my mind, because that would demonstrate it would go one of two ways. They would either give her passport, or they'd have more to explain. Now, the second one is, if you couldn't travel or didn't want to travel, would you object to my going over and spending 2 nights?
Yeah.
She doesn't mind, and so, and by the way, if anybody wants to follow along here, and what I mean by follow along, as this Pakistan trip develops, see, here's a really good example of how customs has their head up their ass, and how the embassy should not have delayed ever. How's it going to look if I leave London to go to Pakistan to reopen 9/11 and swear on a stack of Bibles or whatever that, and I'm not being disrespectful. Do you know what the Muslim book is called? Torah?
The Quran.
Oh, the Quran. Yeah, the Torah is Jewish. Yeah, I'll swear on, see, I've got two hands. I don't think I'll swear on the Jewish book, no offense to Carl Levin, who quit the same day Jay Rockefeller quit, and somebody's supposed to ask me that. But I'd put my hand on the Quran, and I'd put my hand on a Bible, and I would swear that the Islamic people had nothing to do with 9/11, and I would say that in my 12-year quest for truth, I would place the blame with equal portion upon the Vatican Jesuits, the royals of the UK, unless they wanted to identify who was doing it. Otherwise, it goes to the top. The captain of the ship goes down with the ship. And in the United States, it would be the United States Senior Executive Service, and George H.W. Bush, and my sister, and Hillary Clinton, and John McCain. And I would swear to that. Now, David, if I swear to that, what are they going to do to undo that?
When I was a technical guy in Schlumberger, I tried to get something implemented, and one very bolshy technician at one of the centers, I asked him, what are you going to do if I do this? He said, I'll ignore you. Kind of took me aback. And that's their greatest weapon.
Yeah, that's right. And they've been doing that to you and I for 12 years, have they not?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're not going to ignore this. You know, the times have changed. I could say it until I'm blue in the face, but President Joseph Dunford has been in office since September of 2015. And for anybody within the sound of my voice that can't understand the possibility of that, you should hang up right now and go back and see if there's a Simpsons show or, you know, something like that that you can understand. The United States of America has not been under the grip of Obama or Hillary, and it was never going to be under the grip of Hillary. Now, I'm not a political person, so I don't have an opinion on the guy that wrote a book on masturbating and then got a job when he was 50. But for people that like, voting for Bernie, he was never going to get in anyway, because the absolute truth, and I'm going to say this real slowly, and then people that think I'm nuts can also leave. We did not have an election in 2018. The White Hats in the military refused to allow either of those people in. And in the case of the person with horrendous hygiene problems, they were going to let her in because as the Zio rat, she was going to lead us into World War III. Fortunately, calmer heads, and I'll give you 3 calmer heads, but there's more than that. One of them doesn't look very calm, that's Mattis, but he is. And then there's General Kelly, and he is. And then there's General Dunford. And General Dunford has been running the show since September of 2015. I don't expect everyone to believe it, but I do expect everyone who thinks that's not possible to get out of the chat room so other people can get in. David, over to you.
Yeah, so you asked me what you were doing 51 years ago, right?
Yep. That's right.
You know what I was doing about 54 or 5 years ago?
No, I have no clue.
I was pacing out the sightlines in Dealey Plaza to see if I could understand what happened to your president, JFK. And I knew instinctively that this was a setup.
Well, do you have any idea if Abel Danger had an agent at Dealey Plaza for the last 2 weeks shooting film?
No, I didn't.
Well, I'll tell you now we did, and his name's Fry Daddy, and he's got still, he's got video, he's done all the trajectory, and I'm glad you brought up JFK, because his wife, not his wife, one of the shooters is Jimmy Files, and Jimmy Files' wife and I have been communicating today because she's going down to the place where Denise and I are going in November, and I told, I'll pull this email up and I'm going to put it up, and Telford, I don't know if Gobsmack's here, I hope he is. I'm checking to see if Gobsmack's here. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, he's here. And Braveheart. Braveheart, are you here? Yep. I want those 3 guys, Telford, Gobsmack, and Braveheart, to remind me if I do not put up the letter from Pam Files within 2 minutes of my being quiet. Not only has Pam Files been called to Caravan to Midnight to speak on Jimmy Files' behalf, which she's going to do, probably with a little... Is it trepidation, David, or crepitation? Trepidation, isn't it?
Trepidation.
Yeah, you know, she's married to Jimmy Files, the killer of JFK, and I said if she goes there, that Denise and I and Kimberly and Fry Daddy and Craig Peterson would be with her. Anytime she came out of her room, one of us would be there, and it would probably be a woman, which means Denise or Kimberly, to escort her to the event. So she wouldn't have to, first of all, she wouldn't have to worry about anything anyway, because Braveheart and the prayer warriors would pray a hedge of protection around her. But I think that's quite gutsy of this Pamela Files, who married a JFK shooter, to go down to Dallas. And I don't know if she's going to speak, but I'm guessing she might be speaking, because if you're not speaking, then you're just attending the conference. But I think with a personality like hers, and I don't mean how she behaves, I mean who she's married to, I think that the crowd would really wish... In fact, I volunteered to give up, I don't know what my time slot is, but I volunteered in writing to give half my time to her, because I think her story is much more compelling than anything I might talk about, but she's going to release a book, and the book may be published. Denise, did you know that the book may be published in Wales? Yeah, when Denise and I went to Llangollen, North Wales last month, we went to a dinner hosted by Agent Sierra Mike and her husband Brad, and it turns out that Agent Sierra Mike owns a publishing company, and she's willing to publish anything Abel Danger produces. She's also, I asked her just today, and I'm going to put this in as soon as I shut my trap, she has committed to publishing Jimmy Files' new book, which is going to be released at the same conference I'm releasing the DVD on MH17. So anyway, over to you. I'm going to put up that letter so everybody knows I really communicated thusly. Over to you, David.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So having paced out the sightlines and chatted to Jack Ruby's barber, who told me that everyone in Dallas knew there were multiple snipers, and then it seems a long time, 55 years on in life, we come to the present time. I had the privilege of meeting or talking with Dan Handley, the connection through the EU, and continuing effectively without a break the mystery of the JFK assassination, and discovering the role of Victor Rothschild, the late Victor Rothschild, who will be, his ghost will have a part to play in these plays, and I'll be tracking Victor Rothschild. He died in 1990. I was born in 43. I went to Cambridge when I was 18, 43, 53, 58. Maybe a little later, and I gradually learned the story of the Cambridge 4 or the Cambridge 5 that allegedly betrayed all of the UK's weapons secrets to the Soviet Union. And I think they certainly did, but the prime beneficiary was the network of bankers and intellectuals around NM Rothschild and Sons Limited, which is the fifth oldest bank in the United Kingdom. It was set up in 1811, which is very interesting because that's the year, I think his name was John Hall or James Hall. He approached Dr. William Thornton, the Anglo-American superintendent of the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and applied for a patent for his rifle. And Dr. Thornton told him that it had already been invented. He was talking about the Ferguson rifle that was patented in 1776. It hadn't, but that's by the by. But Dr. William Thornton said, however, I will issue you with a patent if you will add my name to the patent application. Which is interesting because effectively that means the Anglo-American Dr. William Thornton established a beachhead, is that the right word, inside the United States Patent and Trademark Office, which has persisted to this day because Victor Rothschild, the guy I'm tracking, he actually authorized the transfer of all the United Kingdom's patented devices developed for the World War II, including the proximity fuse, which I believe was used to detonate the missile that was fired near MH17 over Donetsk that brought it down. The cavity magnetron, which was taken by Henry Tizard to Washington for their examination, and a trade of the devil was done because what seems to have happened is the British transferred the details of the cavity magnetron to the Americans on the understanding that the British or the American controlled RCA, Radio Corporation of America, could take the patent and the profits would be split with the United States military-industrial complex. What I'm really saying is there's no angels here. As far as JFK is concerned, he was shot by a Remington XP100 rifle, a fireball rifle as it's called, and it had Redfield sights on it. That was the same sighting system as used to shoot Martin Luther King. So what we've got with Victor Rothschild is he realized that Rothschild and its clients, which include these banks that met on the first floor, 47th floor of the North Tower, could take control of a sovereign state through the patent office. Going back to Lemelson, with 605 patents to his credit, invents a prisoner tracking system and an identification friend or foe switching system that would allow a group of con men or parolees or prisoners to get inside New York on 911, take up key positions, and put on a play. So the public was treated to a play on 911, and I think we can put on a play that tells the public what actually happened on 911. So I respect your decision. I don't know whether it's a decision yet, because, you know, hopefully when you look at all the details, you might want to play that role yourself. It wouldn't be very time consuming. But I think some good actor can play your role as you shadow your sister through the attack of 911. She's retired. She knows where all the skeletons are. And I think she's still fully functioning in terms of that global Con Air network, that she's able to deploy a SWAT team anywhere in the world, maybe in Kuala Lumpur, or maybe in the Kiev control tower, and able to execute a crime which is made to look like or be attributed to some amorphous international terrorist group, when really it's a domestic criminal organization that America and the United Kingdom and the Australia, New Zealand, and the Five Eyes countries have basically got to deal with. So it's a 12:05 field. We covered a lot of ground, and I look forward to the next show.
Okay, well, why don't you dismiss yourself, and I'll invite Braveheart if he's here to come on briefly. And I'm not sure if he's here or not, but you can punch your button whenever you wish, and if Braveheart can't come on, then I'll sing and dance, and I'll be gone too. So, night to you, and Braveheart is here, so he'll be calling soon. Night, David. David is goofy. He's, you know, for 12 years he's been saying you can educate people. No, you cannot. You know, it's noble of him to try, but another thing, have you picked up on the fact he said he's going to travel around the country and play in these plays? He hasn't traveled once for an Able Danger event. He's not going to travel. I don't know why he thinks that. Anyway, I hope he does well, and I hope that we can help him, but I don't think it's possible to Braveheart, where are you? I don't think it's possible to educate people. Look at the state of education here in this country, and look at the state of education in the United States. And besides that, if the entire world were educated, so what? That's my opinion. Braveheart, are you here? Let's see if I can call him. Do-dee-doo, dee-dee-dee. Looks like Braveheart's not on Skype. I'll go back to the chat room and see if he's there. Let's see. Braveheart, I will be on in a minute. Oh, great. I'm going to ask Braveheart to do some spontaneous things. And then have you seen, Denise, have you seen Kelly in here yet? I have not. And I know she's supposed to be home. And I'm guessing that maybe there is no room for her to sneak in. Oh, yeah, there she is. Would everybody in the chat room please welcome Kelly Fustos, F-U-S-T-O-S. She's from Allen, A-L-L-E-N, Texas. And she contacted me for the first time yesterday and said, Field, if you need a little help with the paperwork, I think I can be helpful. And she was, in fact, helpful. I'm going to ask you, Kelly, not to put pressure on you, I'm just going to ask you if you got into the chat room as soon as you tried, because we had a fair amount of people and sometimes we fill up. So, for those long-term, well, so much for long-term. Is this Pastor Braveheart?
This is he. How are you today, Field?
Well, I'm exasperated, because, well, I'm tired, but I also, and I'm not looking for a confirmation or an argument or I, Field McConnell, think it's absolutely impossible to educate the world. Further, I think it's impossible to educate the United Kingdom or the United States, but I think it's very possible to expose evil and bring down the evil, and I truly, first of all, I don't want you to agree with me. Sometimes I question people who agree with me, but I think it's much more effective to attack the evil and make them fail. But I was wondering, can you think of any scripture you could pray spontaneously about that wherever certain people go, God goes before them, Jesus holds their hand? And
yes, and I posted that earlier. It's out of Deuteronomy.
Okay.
And that's a fact. So you
quiet.
want? Okay. Father, I thank you that in all situations, in all cases, those that yield themselves to you, believe in you, and have your Son as their Lord and Savior, that you go before them, you go with them, and you precede them. Because you have guaranteed you will never leave us nor forsake us. You have said in your word that greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. And as we go forth to unmask and bring light to the evil and the darkness that's round about us, we thank you that, Lord, you are with us through your Holy Spirit. And that if we will abide in you, you will abide in us. And you will bring forth the good works, the good fruits that we need to do in this conquest. And I just pray right now, no, everyone will not hear and everyone will not see, but those that have ears and those that have eyes and are willing to be made aware of what is happening in this world. I would ask right now that you would work in their hearts and open them up to see and to hear. And those willing and brave enough, like Field McConnell, to go out and expose the heinous acts of people who ascribe to satanic work, that, Lord, they would respond and they would see. There is but one hope. That hope is your Son, our Lord, Field of Minds, and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen and amen.
Well, in your words, which I agree with and I respect, and I did not find them, you did. At the same time you were praying, our agent Telford Russian, notice for the record I didn't say David R-U-S-I-N, I said Telford Russian because I would not want to expose David R-U-S-I-N any more than I would want to expose Craig Peterson with a K, K-R-A-I-G, P-E-T-E-R-S-O-N. But thank you for your prayer first and foremost, and thank you for accepting the position of pastor at the ranch if we get the ranch. And I think my latest, well, first of all, I've always hoped, prayed, and believed at 99% possible we'd get the ranch, but like many other things, until the funding comes, it's just hopes, prayers, and firm belief. And at some point, the firm belief will turn into disappointment or victory. And I know what side God favors, it's victory. So am I correct in thinking, Braveheart, that if the ranch occurs, you'd be down there full-time as the pastor?
I know in my heart that that is the call of God on my life at this time in my life. So yes, I would be. Well,
it's the call of God for others too. Denise and myself, Bucky Badger, who you don't know yet, he's in Atlanta, Georgia. He's felt for 15 or 20 or more years that he's being called to minister to suffering souls. And see, ministering doesn't have to be, here's a word I hate, religious. Ministering doesn't have to be Bible-based or religious or spiritual. Ministering can be something as simple as putting your hand on a shoulder, smiling, or giving a Christian hug. And the reason I use the term Christian hug is sometimes there's males out there that'll hug any woman just because they're more heterosexual than they are polite. I'll leave it at that. But you see, that what I would gain from you being there all the time is if the ranch happens, it's either both or nothing. If the ranch happens, an airplane's going to happen where we as an enterprise would be able to go anywhere in North America and anywhere in the world, literally, but I think our focus would be on the United Kingdom and Russia and Israel initially. But we can fill the airplane up in London or St. Petersburg or Moscow. As far as the Israeli contribution, there's Israeli people in this country right now that would love to come down to the ranch, and I think it will happen. And if it does happen, and I'm alive, and I fully expect to be alive, then I'm supposed to be the CEO, but I'm also being given the opportunity to fly. Now, I'm gonna give you something, Braveheart, and then you tell me if you can see the hand of God in this. Right now, Denise and I are 3 miles from the Farnborough Airport. The airplane family that the enterprise is looking at are Gulfstream products, which are built somewhere in Savannah, Georgia, and Long Beach, California. They're going to open, Gulfstream is going to open a service center right here at Farnborough. So, and we also have a former enlisted man working for, when I say we, Able Danger Network has a former, very skilled and highly qualified avionics technician that went from the U.S. Navy to Northwest to Boeing to Alaska Airlines, and he's now found his way down to Gulfstream at Long Beach. And that man's name, I'm trying to think, I can't remember. I know what his humorous nickname is, but that's not suitable for this conversation. But do you see the hand of God in the fact that we're hoping to get a Gulfstream and they're opening a facility 3 miles from Denise's house?
Oh, without a doubt, Field. The Lord's plans, as we know from Jeremiah, were from before the foundations of the earth, before he even created us. He had a plan, and he had a plan for each and every one of us that would heed to his call. So none of this is by chance, and none of this is a coincidence, and none of this is to be taken lightly. He has enabled and set things up, and your whole idea of not only we bring American veterans to this ranch and minister to them and see healing and bring the suicide rate down and give them a hope, literally deprogram them from the heinous acts that they were a part of in war, but to bring veterans from other countries, especially ones that the government or the New World Order said were our enemies, and begin to mend bridges and build rapport and heal the entire globe from the wars that have been propagated through evil. What an amazing thing, and how else but to have this airliner to go out and pick up. I think of the same thing with the World War II monument and how they would take the old World War vintage planes and pick up the vets and bring them to see that thing. I see that as the same here at the ranch, and it won't be one plane, it'll be numerous as time goes on.
Well, you've just given me an idea that I hadn't thought of, and there's a couple of other Marines in the chat room right now, I think. And of course, when I say other Marines, keep in mind that I commissioned you, and I don't have authority to do that, but God does. So, in fact, there's 2 more Marines between Lynn Cool and Mark Ott. There's M4 Sabo. That stands for Marines for Colonel James Edward Sabo, U.S. Marine Corps, who was bludgeoned to death on the orders of George H.W. Bush, and he died on the morning of the 22nd of January of 1991 in his backyard, and a guy named Colonel Porky Underwood, who was his next-door neighbor, was in on the murder, and Porky went over and banged on his back door and said, "Hey, why don't you come out in the backyard and talk to me?" And so he came out in the backyard, and he was in his bathrobe, and he was bludgeoned to death by CIA Marine Corps murder assassin teams that were sent courtesy of George H.W. Bush. So I think we're close to several things. Somebody asked about the global reset. I believe they may be even stalling until the 4th of July, but we may get really good news on multiple fronts by Independence Day. And we may, one of those things, it's entirely possible. I'm not suggesting it's likely, but it's possible that Trump would have by then severed the ties that bind us to the evil kingdom over here. The United Kingdom and the royals, in my mind, are responsible for the vast amount of oppression worldwide. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'll apologize, but I won't curtsy. I noticed that Theresa May tried to curtsy, and I don't know how she kept from tipping over. But anyway, enough about that. I do think the ranch is a multifaceted area to draw good people in to serve, and also draw discouraged people in that we can serve them. And I had not considered bringing groups like World War II vets, which are they're getting pretty old. I'm going to do the math. The end of World War II was 45. If a kid was 16 when he got in, he was born in 29. So it's 71 and 18 is 89 years old. But, you know, if they were ambulatory and were interested, we could pick up groups of World War II vets. We could pick up groups of Korean War vets. We could have veterans, meaning Vietnam vets, all day long. And I'm going to ask you a question, and no problem if you can't answer it. But are you, I'll do it in stages. Are you aware of the rude treatment Sarah, what's her name, got at the Red Hen in Lexington, Virginia the other day?
Yes, I am very much aware of what happened to Sarah Huckabee.
Do you know what the Harley Davidson motorcycle people are doing to push back about that?
I believe they're having a rally in support of Trump.
Yes, and I'm just guessing. I'm not a biker, and I'm not well balanced, so I would need 3 wheels. At least the Northwest Airlines and the Airline Pilots Association and the Department of Justice and Boeing thought I'm not well balanced. But you know, it's been a 12-year argument, and I think I've proven I'm balanced and they're at risk. But it's my understanding and belief that these Harley guys are going to drive their motorcycles into the parking lot until there's no room for anybody else. And then, you know, if they were ever to ask me for advice, I'd just say go in and ask for a glass of water and sit there till you get it.
Well, they'd be bold enough to do that too, Phil. I was on the Patriot Guard for a while that used to escort caskets to the Riverside Cemetery when I lived in SoCal. And I'll tell you what, that's a formidable force when we get together, especially if you're going to come out there and try to protest anything that we believe in.
Well, did you say you were with the Patriot Guard?
Correct.
Did you actually ride a bike, or did you were you riding something else?
No, I have a what would be considered a custom cruiser, not factory built, but on a Harley Davidson frame.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because I know that you have a military-related injury to your legs. But when you bring up the Patriot Guard, if Denise and I, you know, if it works out where Denise is in the country, which I am confident it will, and if it works out where the ranch occurs, and I was told yesterday that it's very, very close, and I got that in a coded message, not black and white English, because sometimes there's things called non-disclosure agreements, which, for instance, I might have signed a non-disclosure agreement where I would say I will never say that Christine Morrissey and George H.W. Bush are the 2 most evil people in America and the greatest traitors that need to be dealt with first. I couldn't say that if I had an NDA, but I don't have an NDA, so I can say it, and not only can I say it here, I'd say it under oath. Now, Braveheart, did you pick up on the fact that during this radio show, I've been contingently called to Pakistan?
Yes, I'm very much aware of that. Seen an email in regards to that, as well as what was discussed today. And
you know, well, see, I don't look at that from an egotistical standpoint. I truly don't know how the perpetrators of 9/11 are going to keep the genie in the bottle. I think the genie's already out, and I would love to go to Pakistan, not because I like traveling. I actually hate it, and I'll put my hand on a travel document and say I hate traveling. It's not like it used to be. And the security garbage is absolute garbage. We don't need TSA. What TSA stands for in the United States of America is thousands standing around. They all sit there with a badge and, probably a sustenance level income. And they're supposed to threaten us. But I know this is going to sound terribly judgmental, but walking through the Minneapolis airport or last week, no, that was this week, the Boston airport, I didn't see a whole lot of TSA guys that looked very threatening. And this is going to sound judgmental, and this is wonderful. Let's see if I want to answer this. I don't think I want to answer that. I don't know who it was. In fact, I can Google who it was. So if it's somebody that knows me, they wouldn't be calling during a show. There is the slim chance that that person calling was Agent Kelly Fustos. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I hope she's still here, because I'm going to ask her, Kelly, was that you? Because if that was you, Kelly, I'll call you right back. But why don't I turn it over to you, Braveheart, and come, whatever other ideas you see for how we can heal souls. It's a 450-acre ranch, and I think something that could be done 2 to 3 times a year is invite Harley, and of course Goldwing guys could come, or BMW guys, but motorcycle guys that are patriotic, whether they're veterans or not. Most of those, and this is a question to you, don't most of those types of people have a sleeping bag and provisions where they could actually camp out if they had to?
Oh, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
We used to ride and be able to be mobile with 2 saddlebags, a sleeping bag, and a tent for 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, see, we could, there's no limit to what we could accomplish with that ranch, and we would be serving, most visibly, we'd be serving veterans. To a lesser degree, we'd be encouraging a constitutional republic form of government for the United States of America, and ultimately we would be serving God, because, and now I'm going to embarrass myself because I always get this one wrong, but I think it's Matthew 25:38 to 40, where it says, when did we see you hungry and not feed you? And when did we see you in prison and not visit you? Anyway, that would be one of the compelling scriptures at the ranch, that, you should reach out to strangers and care about them. And you don't have to cram Christianity down your throat. Just give them a smile and a handshake and an arm around their shoulder. Over to you.
Absolutely, Field. There's the potential there is just unbelievable. And 2540 says, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And that's a powerful verse. That's the Lord himself stating that. I see not only the equine therapy, which I've gone through. I spent 2 years in that, and it was phenomenal what it did for me for PTSD as well as other things. The dog therapy, and possibly even providing service dogs for vets, is in the realm of not only those that are physically challenged, but also for PTSD. Now they're finding that's very good. Having motorcycle rallies, inviting the Marines or the Leathernecks groups and the Vietnam veterans groups. They all have their own cuts, and they all have their own clubs. There's the legacies now. There's many of those types of things. There's also DAV riders, etc. What a phenomenal things, barbecues, family things. At Equine Center, we'd be able to have concerts, and they're not just horse events. There's unlimited potential. It's as far as you'll open your heart to allow God to use that facility to bring mostly healing, and especially for families as well, with the houses of honor that we're talking about erecting. So I'm thrilled at the idea of giving back to vets through the ranch and everything that Abel Danger will be able to do and continue to do there at that ranch.
Yeah, back to that equine facility. One of our, I call them named agents, and just, I know Braveheart, you've been here less than 10 years, but I'll go through the list of people that are in the chat room right now, and I'll only mention the named agents. Agent 66, Agent JR, Agent Lyra, do. Agent Braveheart, Agent Telford Russian, Agent Dice. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Myself, who cares? Gobsmack, Jack Mac, and let's see, named agents. M4 Sabo. I see Mad Dog bailed out. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Oh no, I did. Vanishing Point. He's a fellow down in, I always get it mixed up. It's Seaford, or what town is Vanishing Point from? It's between Brighton and Seaford. East something. But it doesn't matter. But anyway, we've got a lot of named agents, but there's so many things we could do. One of our named agents, which I've never seen him in the chat room, but we call him French Champagne for a very good reason. He would like to participate by instructing. I think we might have music playing in the background. I could be wrong. But I got a thing. Oh, okay, I understand. Denise has to run off. There's a fellow out in Virginia named French Champagne who has said that if we get the ranch, he would come out there and put on a model, remote control model flying school where the students, they could build their own airplanes, or we could get some low-end remote control aircraft and they could fly them. We could have an indoor flying event, which might be interesting, but that's how big that building is. It's 32,600 square feet, and we could certainly build a runway, some type of a hard surface, which would probably be, I don't know, I'm not a remote control model person. I'm actually a remote control airline person, because I think it's fair to say, I know who that is, and I should probably, I'm not going to turn my phone on because somebody interesting might call and we'll put them on the air. No, I think the only things that limits to what we could do for other people who feel that God has forgotten them, and let me address that right now and then I'll let you correct me. God has never forgotten anyone. Sometimes we have forgotten God, and as a nation, the United States of America corporation surely has turned away from God and offended him over and over and over and over again. But I truly believe that we're in a period right now, and the period started probably on the, I don't remember what day President Trump was in Singapore, but that was the latest for the start of the change. It could have been earlier than that. It could have been when he was up in Canada with Macaroni Man, Hook Nose, Fidel's Bastard, and Angela Merkel. But there's a new sheriff in town. There's a new paradigm. God will be honored. God will be served. But did you want to make a comment about how this country appears to have turned away from God a long time ago, Mark?
Are you there, Phil?
Yeah, I'm here. Is your Skype fragile?
Best, but I can hear you now.
Okay. I was just saying that...
What was the question?
Yeah, I was just saying that it appears to me that the United States has suffered mightily because they turned away from God, kicking God out of the classrooms and out of the schools and out of, the reality. But the reality is, I started by saying God has never forgotten any of his creations, but sometimes we as individuals have failed to remember God.
Phil, I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect. And
You want to try again, or should we call it a night?
yeah, I'll try again. Let me hang up.
Okay, take your time, no problem. I wonder if Kelly's still. Oh, there we go. Kelly, I'm going to call you if that's okay. How now, brown cow?
Hello.
Yeah, loud and clear here.
And that new music in the background is next door. Sorry for that. At least it's just instrumental.
Okay.
Put a few pictures of the ranch up, and I believe you were talking about how our country, in many ways, has abandoned their faith and their fortitude and standing up for what they believe is right with biblical standards and Judeo-Christianity. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, I think that there's people, though, individual people that feel that God has forgotten them or abandoned them, and I don't think that's likely the case. I think those people might feel that way because they have not willingly turned away from certain things and sought God's favor.
Uh, would agree with you. And, you know, one of the things that's what we consider a fruit of the Spirit, and also what's comes within each and every believer through trials and tribulations, is a thing called perseverance or patience. There was a time when early on in my Christianity, 29 years ago, that they tell me, never pray for patience because you don't want to go through what you're going to go through. Well, you're going to go through it anyway because God promises us trials and tribulations, which teaches us that. Without that perseverance and without that patience, sometimes we want to get ahead of God. And as I've shared once before, I like to always refer to the story where a close friend of the Lord's named Lazarus was very ill, and he had a sisters named Mary and Martha, and or a messenger and said, "Hey, we need you at Mary and Martha and Lazarus' house. He's taken ill, and we know that you could come there and with a word bring healing to him." Well, the Lord acknowledged the messenger, and he arrived 4 days after Lazarus had already perished. And of course, everybody was distraught why he took so long. And within the Hebrew tradition, they believed anyone dead over 3 days was unresurrectable. And so the Lord appeared, he comforted Martha and Mary and told them, that he came at his appointed hour, basically. And I'm paraphrasing. And they said, "Lord, if you'd only been here, our brother possibly could still be alive." And he had them take him out to the place where Lazarus had been entombed. It's been in there 4 days. The stench alone will be terrible. And he says, "Pull back the stone." So they pushed back the stone, and the Lord called forth, "Lazarus, come forth." And out comes Lazarus, still in his many demonstrations there. God can resurrect at any time, just like he can blow into some dirt and create us. At the same time, there was more that was to be experienced there. And the main thing that I take away from that is Jesus, or God, is never in a hurry, but always on time. His timing is perfect. There was many things that he was demonstrating there, and many things that he's going to demonstrate to others that are holding on by a fingernail right now, saying, "I can't hold on much longer." It says in Corinthians, he never gives us more than we can handle, with always a window of escape. I would say to those that have lost their hope or lost or their faith is wavering, get into his word, listen to some good solid praise music, and reinforce and pray and spend that time daily bathing and understanding God's timing is always perfect. There has never, ever been a time where it wasn't perfect. And you can ask for God's good blessing, or you can ask for God's best blessing. The best blessing comes when it's God's appointed time. Over to you, Field.
Oh, thank you. It's first of all, you ministered to me with those words, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm sure you touched other people too. And when the ranch occurs, I truly believe it will, and I'll probably know more before I go to bed here. It's 8:35 over here in not so great Britain. But Britain can be saved too if the people would stop putting up with their crappy government. But of course, I sound hypocritical because the Americans have been putting up with our crappy government up to this year. And once again, it's not widely understood in the United States of America that there was not an election between Trump and what's her name. The U.S. military white hats, depleted as they were, they put their foot down and they said, "Nope, we're not doing it for her, and we're going to save the country." I truly believe that's what happened. But I was really blessed when you said you'd be willing to be the day-to-day guy in my absence and the full-time pastor, because I was actually a lay pastor with a Salvation Army when Katrina happened, and I was willing. I'd been selected to go down there in rotation and minister to the suffering people on the streets. But fortunately, before my name came up, they canceled that program. But I felt very qualified to go down there and be surrounded by poor black people that are angry and yet be perfectly safe. And a number of years ago, in 2014, in March, I was asked to come down to Kuala Lumpur, and 4 people that cared about me, and I know David was one, I don't know who the other 3 were, but 4 people who knew me and cared said, "You shouldn't go there, they might kill you." I said, "Who gives a rat's ass? We're all dying anyway. If I'm going there out of pride or ego or seeking attention, then I'm vulnerable. If I'm going there because God's directing my footsteps, then there's no weapon raised against me that'll prosper." Now, you made a mention of Jeremiah's plans, and those, I don't know if you finished that comment, but that's written in Jeremiah 29:11, and let me share this with everyone in the chat room. You don't know the plans he has for you, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to something you and give you hope. Do you remember what the something is? I can't remember, but someone will put it up in the chat room within 30 seconds, I'm confident. I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. Somebody will put up Jeremiah 29:11. But I'm looking forward to the ranch, because if you can be the pastor, lay pastor, I feel qualified to do that too, but I think that's being sort of pushy to be the CEO and the pastor and the pilot. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad according to Meatloaf. So if you'll handle the full-time pastor and part-time CEO, I'll handle the flying and the person who looks like a CEO. But this is when you talk about God's timing being perfect. I've been a witness to God's timing for a great long number of years, and I can see how he does things in an orderly fashion that's beyond human comprehension. So I'm sitting here waiting on Denise's visa, and when you're done with me, Mark, I'm going to call a woman that just is in her first appearance in the chat room. Her name is Kelly, Kelli Fustos. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter. I want to pronounce it right, but she's a lot bigger than that, just like most people in our chat room. We don't get worried about nitnoid details. So do you have some final thoughts you'd like to leave us with before you may elect to go? And then I'll have her on for 5 or 8 minutes, and then I'll elect to go.
All right. Well, I just want to end with this, Field. It says in the Word, "You have not God's will, not our will." We surrendered our will and became a bondservant when we became a follower of Jesus Christ and made him Lord and Savior. So when we seek God's will, then everything that God had planned for us in that Jeremiah 29:11 will come to fruition. And that doesn't mean a perfect life. It rains on the just and the unjust. We're going to go through all kinds of trials through life, but in the end, it's walking to run. And that's what this is all about. I was part of a homeless ministry out of an old movie theater in Vacaville, California in 1999. I did that for a year as a lay pastor, and I remember spending time under the bridges in back. This one man into the ER as he was dying in my arms tonight, and he was emaciated. He is alcoholic for ever since Vietnam. This is 1999. I think he came back in '68. And he was all but dead. And I thought for sure he was going to die that night, because I had found people dead down under the bridges prior to that. And so Larry ended up getting taken in and taken care of, and he was very grateful. I hooked him up with the Disabled American Veterans, and a year later he was one of their representatives, clean and sober. So you just never know. You just go out and do the work of the Lord and let the Lord handle it all. And all I did was simply pray for that man. Lord, if there's still a purpose in this man's life, if you still have a plan for this man's life, let him find you and let him find his purpose. And he did. So you just never know what this ranch is going to afford and how many lives that we can touch. And I pray as this evil gets uprooted and the new world order gets exposed, that we'll be one of many ranches and many things like this around the country that will be touching lives and helping people heal from all the corruption and all the heinous things that have gone on because of these people who choose to serve Lucifer. So with that, I thank you for this opportunity to be on the radio show with you today. Unexpected, but always welcomed. I thank everyone out there for being here today and doing your part as we go forth, exposing what needs to be exposed and looking forward to the future. Keep the hope. Those that are losing hope, there's always hope. Hold on and believe. Pray. Get on your knees. They call it camel knees. Prayer works. It's the greatest weapon we have. Stand strong. Serve the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and go forth. Christ gave us 2 commands: love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That sums up all of it. And if you can do that, you're going to find your life is full of joy. It's not about what you can get. If you help somebody where you can get something in return, you've done nothing. But if you help somebody expecting nothing in return, knowing they can't give you anything in return, then you've done the Lord's work. So I'll pray that for everybody tonight as I call it a day. And with that, I say goodbye, Phil, unless you got anything else.
Okay, and before you go, Mark, let me thank you for participating on short notice. But also, Monday, David and I are doing the show at 1300 Central, which is 1900 GMT, which is 1100 in Markville. But would you like to come on before David next week for an hour or a half hour, whatever you might like, on Monday morning?
I'm always ready in and out of season, as the Lord tells us to be. My assignment has been given to me as part of Abel Danger, so anytime that I can be here, I will be here, Field.
Okay, well, let me just leave you with this, and I think this applies to you. It's 2 Timothy 4:7. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Well, in your case, Mark, the race is not over, and I think the race is going to run through Athens, Texas. So I'm going to bid you a fair night, and I'm going to be calling Kelly, Kelly Fustos, and I'm going to ask her to just talk to the people in the chat room about the telephone conversation she was a party to last night when I called the IRS. So good night, and God bless you. And as soon as I hear good news on the ranch, Mark, you'll be right behind Denise in hearing it also, because I know that we all have faith, we all have hope, but it's nice to see manifest the will of God, that to know that he cares enough about some of us, all of us he cares about, but some of us he will entrust to encourage others, and I think you and I fit into that category.
Amen. All right, well, good night, and God bless one and all.
Okay, well, good night, and God bless, and I'll hang up on you so you don't have to hang up on me.
All right.
Yeah,
bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Aha. So, Kelly, I'm going to call you right now, and then whatever amount of time you want. And meanwhile, people in the chat room, while I dial Kelly, I got to see which number it is. Oh, well, there it is, right there. And Kelly, from the minute you pick up, you're going to be on the speakerphone. You're on the speakerphone now.
Hello?
Kelly, is that you?
Yes, hi, Phil.
Are you feeling okay?
Yes, I'm feeling great. Thank you.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, we don't need to take too much time, but you can talk about whatever you might like to talk about. But if you would be willing to give your opinion of the treatment of me by the IRS last night, I think that would be of interest.
Hold on. Give me 1 second, and I will definitely do that. I was listening to your video.
Take your time. Don't be in a
I'm
hurry.
not here. But as far as the IRS goes and the treatment of you, I do apologize on their behalf, as I stated yesterday. Obviously, they were out of line, but that's nothing typical. But I deal with the IRS on a personal note myself, and I've never witnessed to that degree the amount of rudeness. And I think I've shared with you, I've had identity theft and things like that. The way they treated you yesterday was unacceptable. Like I said, it was nothing that I've ever had to experience. And I've been dealing with them for about 5 years now. Field?
Yeah, you're fine. You're coming through. Everybody's hearing you. And I've I've been dealing with the IRS now and then since I was 27, and on March 22nd of 2015, I sent a letter to the commissioner of the IRS. I can't pronounce his name, but if I could, I'd butcher it anyway, John Koskinen. And I think it's very important to note that the commissioner of the IRS's office is in Puerto Rico. That should be a red flag. But the IRS, according to my understanding, the IRS is a foreign corporation serving the monarch of England. So, continue for a while if you wish.
Well, that sounds about right with the kind of people that they are. But that strikes me, and not only that, let me just throw that back over what I was starting with, but the IRS, the people that they hire, obviously, in my dealings, personally, it's like they hire uneducated. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's just they're not well-versed on their own policies and procedures. And I don't know if you found that, but I also find that in a lot of different agencies, because we made a couple phone calls yesterday. If you may have alerted people of that, but for them to ask for documentation that wouldn't even be credible or even used for your case to get your visa, or to get Denise's visa, is just, it's off. It's so off. Do you want to, did you tell the chat room about that?
No, I didn't, but I'll just say that Kelly and Denise and I were party to a conversation between myself and the Nebraska, some Customs Border Patrol or Customs Immigration Service. It doesn't really matter. It's a corporation. You want to correct me? Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah, and the first gentleman said it's not my, now wait a minute, I'm going to back out of that. That sounded too derogatory. He said, actually, you're talking to the wrong branch, but I can explain it to you. And so then he explained it to us, and we went up the food chain. Did we, in fact, get a hold of New Hampshire?
I'm assuming that's where we called, correct?
We called Nebraska, and I don't know if he pointed the finger at New Hampshire, but ultimately the responsibility rests with the U.S. Embassy. And he commented something that I found remarkably awkward. He said ultimately it boils down to the embassy. Well, if it boils down to the embassy, why did I start with Nebraska and have to go through New Hampshire? So
that's a great point.
Yeah, I think so.
Also, with that being said, for them to backtrack, they're the first people that you started with, or the first agency you started with to get to the embassy. I think you went through 3 steps.
Yes, I started with Nebraska. Nebraska has, in fact, approved the visa, but then New Hampshire has to sign off on it, and then the embassy has to deliver it. And I think the embassy will deliver it, for all the harassment that all of these steps along the way have dished out. Ultimately, the embassy said if Denise has her medical, and the medical is satisfactory, which it is, and we see Field's proof of ability to pay, which they already had it, but they want to see it again. I guess they like to scare us. But anyway, the margin, the threshold of what earnings I have to be able to be capable of affording a spouse or anything else to come over here, and I'd be responsible for the expenses. I'm way beyond the threshold, so I just have to prove it. And I think something interesting that I'm going to pick up and show people is this is a form from the U.S. Embassy, and I know it's hard to read. I'll take a photograph and put it in the chat room after we hang up. But there's a checklist, and everything's checked off, and then at the bottom it says, an IRS generated transcript of your sponsor's U.S. federal income tax return for the most recent tax year available at irs.gov. Well, it's not available at irs.gov because I couldn't get in there, but it didn't matter. I already had it. If the petitioner's sponsor did not file a U.S. federal tax return for the most recent tax year, and I did not, I haven't filed one since 2013, Submit a signed statement from the petitioner explaining why a tax return was not filed. Well, I did that, and I also sent them my letter to John Koskinen. I'm actually more organized, and I don't know if it's because I'm catching up on my sleep, or if it's to have some helpmate like you join this fight for. I found it. It's very therapeutic to have a stranger help, but this is a letter. Right? I can't believe it was so easily found by me. Here's one letter from Field McConnell to John Koskinen at the IRS. Here's another. One of them is extremely professional and says, you guys are all wet, I'm not paying you. That's online. In fact, with someone in the chat room that has seen my IRS YouTube, and the words to find it are IRS Notice and Demand Field McConnell. I think and you could put it up. But not only can I sign a document saying why I don't pay the IRS, it's very simple. The IRS claims that our tax system is voluntary, and they're right, it is. But they never tell anyone when you volunteer. The answer to that is when you sign your first 1040, they take that as you're volunteering to pay, and they continue to tax you until you tell them to stop, but you have to tell them how to stop, and you do that with, I'm going to my own reference here, but it is my document was a notice and demand to cease and desist collection activities prior to validation of purported debt. Well, when I sent them that, they never responded. They had a 30-day window. At the end of the 30-day window, then it is assumed that they are acquiescing, which means they're rolling over and playing dead, which they did. So there's no problem with me to prove why I don't involve myself with the IRS. I can also send them that YouTube if they want to be entertained. But then this is the critical thing right here, and I'm going to hold it up close to the camera. And there's two things written there, W-2 and 1099. Now on the original, and this is the original, but the embassy employee said that they needed Denise's medical and my W-2s. So I tried for a couple of days to find W-2s before the rude lady from the IRS said, well, you don't have W-2s, you're a retiree, you have 1099-R. Now people might think that I would be unhappy to hear it. No, I was very happy to hear it, because now they're over a barrel. The embassy themselves asked me for the wrong forms, which don't exist. Therefore, I've got a piece of paper around here somewhere. I'm not a very good record keeper. Denise is much better at that. But I've got a document that'll go in tomorrow morning very early, and it'll prove my income going back the last 18 months. My income comes from Delta Airlines, a second Delta Airlines retirement, a Prudential annuity, and the United States Air Force retirement, and Social Security. And it doesn't matter what the number is, but the number is sufficient by a wide margin to provide for Denise, which it's my pleasure to do while I'm alive or in death. So you played a very big part in helping us, and whether you pointed out to me, Kelly, which you did not, or Denise did, or the IRS lady did, somehow somebody got it through my thick brain that the piece that I can use the most effectively to expedite that visa is to say the embassy's wasted. Well, let's see now. This thing was dated 6/18. Today is 6/28. The embassy, by asking for the wrong form, has effectively delayed the visa by 10 days. So I don't like to be a blowhard and talk all the time, Kelly, but do you have any comments to what I just said regarding the mix-up of the W-2 and the 1099?
It's a huge mix-up, Field. It's enormous. It puts a lot of incompetency back onto the embassy and the other two agencies that you had to go to in order to get to this where you're at right now.
Yep.
And so for them to request on May 9th via email, both you and Denise, that they needed 2016 W-2 or 1040, which is the IRS filing, they should know, just based on from the very beginning, that you're a retiree.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, the incompetency falls back on all parties involved, and that excludes you and Denise.
Yeah, I know, and I don't want you or anyone else, I don't want anybody to think that Denise and I feel victimized. We just feel a little bit of frustration, but can I tell you the very good news, Kelly?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. You may know the answer, you may not. Have you ever heard of the U.S. Equity Court?
No, I have not. I've heard of tax court, because I was summoned to tax court. Is that the same thing, possibly? Or is this dealing with corporations, equity?
Well, your court, tax court's a corporation that's in favor of the United Kingdom. Equity court is, in fact, let me ask the chat room, and there's a guy in the chat room who I've met, and he's a wonderful person named Gordon O'Banks. But other than Gordon O'Banks, is there one person in the chat room who's ever heard of the United States Equity Court? And I'll be surprised if anybody. Let me tell you what it is. It is a secret court in every federal courthouse where if you have something that is so egregious that has been done to you, and you want to give them a notice and claim or a claim and demand, you go to the equity court. And in the case of Denise and I, we have been forcibly separated, which is a term which has just come into the popular jargon recently. They've kept us apart, or they've tried to, for 550 days. Okay, the penalty per day for the forceful separation of a married couple is $1.44 million a day. So I'm going to ask Agent JR to multiply 550 times 1.44 million and post in the chat room what that sum is. Then I'm going to ask Gobsmack, because Gobsmack would know that when various enterprises across state lines in the U.S. are conspiring to damage or injure or hurt or inflict suffering upon a person, because of the RICO trebling, the 1.44 million goes to 4.32 million a day. So Gobsmack, if you have a calculator, could you take 4.32 million a day times 550 days? And the point is this, Kelly, neither Denise nor I really care about money, but we do care about each other. That's the whole reason we got married. And I look at her as my end-of-life caregiver, and I look at her as my almost at the end of life source of joy. And the United States government is a member of the United Nations, and every country that is a member of the United Nations has agreed that they cannot separate a man and wife even in a time of war. So I will be entering a claim at the equity court, and the equity court has three choices when the claim is delivered properly. They can pay the claim, they can negotiate downward, which is not likely in this case, or they can assemble a trial by jury within 30 days. Now, for most of you people that have been hanging around Abel Danger for more than 2 weeks, you can probably agree that any court really doesn't want me in their courtroom, and I've proven that to my satisfaction. Tuesday of last week, when I went into the courtroom and walked out with Marcy, when they fully intended to keep her incarcerated because of the knowledge she has. All the whistleblowing pilot friends of mine, I haven't met most of them, but I know one, two, counting me, I know three of us, one in Pakistan, one on the East Coast, and myself. And the game they play with pilots is if you won't shut up, they send you to a shrink. He gives you a diagnosis, and they put you in the hospital overnight, and they give you psychotropic drugs. Once you have a diagnosis, and this is an either or once you have been given psychotropic drugs, you cannot appear in court as an expert witness. Now, I still have my expert witness qualification, and it looks to me like somebody came up with $2.37 billion, and I'm not sure, and it doesn't, once again, the money doesn't matter, but Denise and I are certainly entitled to walking into the equity court. She wouldn't want to do it. Come to think of it, neither would I, because if I walk into the courtroom, and that's what you do, you walk into the courtroom and present it to the judge. if I walked in the courtroom, the guy would be intimidated, and I'm the least intimidating person most of you have ever met. But I would send it for $80 fee. You can have the U.S. Marshals take it in, and once again, they pay, they negotiate, or they schedule a trial. I don't think they can afford to have a trial, and I'm not in the mood to negotiate. So anyway, do you have any more comments or any more questions at all, Kelly, before we call it a night?
Actually, I have one. You had mentioned the drugs being administered when they take you in. Is that knowingly or unknowingly? Do you have to sign something for that?
Are you talking about the drugs?
Yes, absolutely.
I'll tell you two cases. One's a United Airlines pilot whistleblower named Dan Hanley, and when he took some information from Atlanta up to Chicago, because he was pretty much an expert on the illegal bankrupting of United Airlines, where a judge named Eugene, E-U-G-E-N-E, Weedoff, W-E-E-D-O-F, I think that's how you spell it, he got a $30 million bribe to bankrupt United. Now think of all the suffering, the divorces, the suicides, and the poverty that I think at the time United was either the first or the second largest airline in the country, and United and American had both been attacked on 9/11 when their aircraft were used to try to fool America into thinking that Muslims want to kill us. But when Dan Hanley went to FBI, the FBI abruptly arrested him, and they took him to a psychiatric hospital where he stayed overnight, and they injected him against his will with psychotropic drugs, and so he can't be an expert witness. Now this woman who you may or may not be aware of, whose name is Marcy Martin, she was picked up about 3 weeks ago on a trumped-up charge of littering, and in exchange for littering Red Wing, Minnesota, the Goodhue County Sheriff took her to the Mayo Clinic in Austin, Minnesota, where she was diagnosed as needing some psychiatric treatment. So they put her on drugs, and I'm an eyewitness to this. Now, did I see the drugs go down her throat or into her arm? No, but I saw the change of behavior, and she's a wonderfully bright, very good moral character. When I say that, I don't mean male-female. I mean do the right thing and don't back down to people that are sort of flunkies with badges. But I could see that she, especially when they brought her into the courtroom Tuesday of last week, and I was in there, myself and a friend of hers who's a LPN, I think, or a registered nurse, we were the only two normal people in the courtroom, and we were both wearing shorts, and there's plenty of pictures of that. If somebody'd be kind enough, for Kelly's benefit, if you could put up a picture of myself and Marcy and or Paige and the hearse. When they brought her into the courtroom, she looked as dejected as any beaten dog you've ever seen in your life, because dogs don't like to be beaten by their owners. They like to love their owners, and when you beat them, it confuses them. And Marcy had been beaten down by the system to where she was totally dejected. They brought her in some ill-fitting stuff because, well, it wasn't ill-fitting originally, but she had the same clothes coming out of the system that she had going in 2 weeks earlier. She was handcuffed, and then that wasn't enough. They had her handcuffs chained to a belt, and she was told not to look left or right, just look straight ahead, which is good. I think she would have started crying if she saw me. It made me want to cry to see anybody, male, female, young, old, doesn't matter, seeing anybody treated that way by the system. But fortunately for her, 1 minute before the court was supposed to open at 1300 hours, 1 p.m. Central, I handed something like this. I had a piece of paper, it was all typed beforehand, and I delivered it to the clerk of court. They delayed the proceedings 50 minutes so they could change the script, and instead of continued confinement she was freed to my custody, and I took Marcy and the young lady, Paige. We dropped Paige off at Paige's home, and then I took Marcy to her car so she could go back to her home, which they evicted her from, by the way. They evicted her while she was in custody for a trumped-up charge. But there is one angel in this, and that is, I'm not going to mention which police force, but a law enforcement officer who knew, obviously, that she was being mistreated by this system. He went and got her car out of an impound lot where it probably would have cost her $400 to $500 a week, and he moved her car to a secure place. And how do I know that? Because I drove her to that secure place so she could pick her car up. And they've treated her horribly. And this is goes back to Matthew 25:40. When you've done it to one of the least of these brothers or sisters of mine, you've done it to me. So I don't want to sound negative. I think it's all going to work out in the end. But there was a song somewhere in the 60s. They said, what were all the games? Oh, it's by Glenn Campbell. Where's the playground, Susie? What were all the games for? Why is it now I know why the United States does this to our citizens. It's because the UK runs the United States. But I truly believe, and this is an expression of faith and a call for hope, I believe that when Donald Trump comes over here for a meeting with Thatcher and the Queen on an onerous day, Friday the 13th of July, I think there's going to be a new paradigm between the U.S. and the UK, because the present one simply cannot be tolerated anymore. So Kelly, over to you for any closing comments, and then we'll call it a night if that's okay.
Yeah, we can call it a night. I mean, I have more questions or more statements in regards to the HIPAA violations. In order to, and I'll just say this and we can be done, but in order for them to deem somebody as not an expert witness, they would in turn have to prove why. So then in turn they would have to produce medical records, I would assume, correct?
I'm not a legal person, nor would I want to be, but I presume so.
Well, it's common sense in a way, but the HIPAA law is in place to protect all of us, just like every other law that we know protects some and doesn't protect others. It's kind of like a gray area there. However, the law is interpreted on that given day is what I've witnessed myself, but that would probably bring up a lot of, without them signing something stating that their medical records can be disclosed to the court, at that point in time, that whole thing should be thrown out, where you can't be an expert witness if you were administered knowingly or unknowingly psychotropic drugs, I think you had stated.
Yep.
But that's just throwing it out there.
Okay, well, could you send me an email that explains that, and I can include that in our show on Monday?
Absolutely, I will do that.
Okay, well, Denise is right beside me, and she might be... Oh, thank you, David R., for putting up a picture of Marcy and I in the hearse. Now, are you still in the chat room, Kelly?
I'm actually away from my laptop.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, go back later on when you get a chance, and you can see at least one picture of Kelly and I, you're Kelly, Marcy in the hearse. But it was totally not my plan to drive the hearse to intimidate the court, which apparently it did. But I had the parking space closest to the windows where everybody that was waiting to go into the courtroom could look at this beautiful hearse and wonder why it was there. The only reason I took it, it's my lowest mileage car. It's a 96, but it only has 22,000 miles, and it was supposed to be hot and humid, and that car has a very good air conditioner, so I took it as a kindness to myself, and it turned into a signal to the court, and they didn't want any part of it. And so the proceeding, or the judge's participation in the release was about 1 minute, and he made some explanation of why he was going to release her. Now, just to update people on Marcy, today she had to reappear in court, and I think they were just going to make sure she was maintaining their conditions of relief, which is no drugs, no alcohol. I find that remarkable when 90% of the judges are alcoholics and some are using drugs. I guess it's different rules for them and us, but those days will be over too. So I'd like Denise to say goodnight to you if she's willing. Can you just say goodnight to Kelly?
Good night, Kelly.
Good night, Denise.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time last night. And so I'll say goodnight to you now, and then I think we'll go through the shutdown of the chat room procedure, okay?
Okay, thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much. Talk to you later, and I'll look for an email from you. Yeah, bye-bye. When she came on, some people in the chat room said it sounded like she was nervous or upset, and I do, you know, I don't know if she was or she wasn't. She sounded real good at the end, though. There was a song I asked her. Is George home? Okay. Well, I guess we've had enough fun and games. I'll just ask for the red button. Doo-dee-doo. Anyway, we're going to, as soon as the red button comes up, I promise to honor the protocol if it's correct. Did Marcy have any priors with control? No, not that I'm aware of. The issue with Marcy is she used to work for the fourth largest, there's the red button, electric provider in the country, and as their director of IT, she was well aware of some frailties in the infrastructure, and I'll stop there because I don't want them to pick her up again. No, she has no history of drug abuse or alcohol abuse that I'm aware of, and it really doesn't matter. Is it worth 2 weeks of anybody's time to be in a psychiatric hospital for littering? And the answer is no. And can you imagine the dollars in professional staff that kept her there for 2 weeks, starting with the judge, 2 attorneys, a bunch of medical people, and they're all, well, they're not honest people. So I'm tired. As if Denise had more energy, she'd tell you how tired I am. But I'll just say I see that we have a big red button, so